Those of you who aren't familiar with Aurora, we are a public arts organization working at the intersection of art, technology, and community to present some of the most visionary artists of our time. When the city of Fort Worth commissioned a major art installation at Pioneer Tower through the Fort Worth Public Art Program, everyone involved knew that the project was extremely important for this complicated and large-scale piece to feature internationally celebrated experts in new media art like Rafik Anadol and Davide Koyala. But we also knew it was just as important to showcase the incredible work and talent of the Fort Worth and Dallas Metroplex artists. Thanks to our sponsors, the Texas Commission on the Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts, we were able to work with talented Dr. Lauren Cross to fill the grounds with the works by 10 regional artists. Dr. Lauren Cross is an interdisciplinary artist, filmmaker, curator, and scholar. Cross's feature film, The Skin Quilt Project, was the official selection for the 2010 International Black Women's Film Festival in Berkeley, California. She is a passionate advocate for diversity in the arts and has written and contributed to research in the fields of women's studies, visual studies, and multicultural studies. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Lauren Cross.
Hello.
He would be personal. Okay. It's all good to begin. Hey, y'all. I'm like. Let's do it.
I'm not tired. Are you tired?
Oh, yeah. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here and to be here with these fantastic and amazing artists that you see before you. I'm Dr. Lauren Cross, the curator of the exhibition, New Stories, New Futures, and it was just such a pleasure to select these amazing artists for this show. So for this part one of our Artist Talk series, I wanted to highlight artists whose works are speaking to memory, the value and the contributions of culture, as well as in memoriam to individuals within that our artists are drawing to our attention, as well as communities, in memoriam to communities that are underserved and underrepresented and unheard within our communities. So it's my pleasure to present these awesome artists today. Nick Bontrager. Nick Bontrager is an interdisciplinary artist whose work and research explores physical and conceptual nature of the moving image, game-based interactions and exchanges. He received his MFA from The Ohio State University for studies in art and technology, and his BFA at the University of Houston in photography and digital media. His work in New Stories, New Futures is a work he calls Alone Together, and it features objects and imagery that are informed by both personal experiences and the history of gaming culture. Help me in welcoming Nick to our conversation today. Ciara Elle Bryant is a multidisciplinary artist using photography, video, and installation to explore Black culture in the new millennium. Her art and curatorial practices center around documenting and preserving the Black experience. She's had recent solo exhibitions at Road 2 Art Gallery in Dallas, the Nasher Sculpture Center, and the Ex-Ovo Suite Pass Sculpture Park, where she has featured her ongoing installation project called Server. Server is an installation of Bryant's data archive featuring imagery and audio familiar to her personal Black experience. And her work in New Stories, New Futures is an aspect of the Server project, and it's called Server Checks on the Block, where she's taking a deep dive into sneaker-wearing culture as a contribution from Black culture, as well as looking at Air Force Ones as they exist in the present day. Our next artist is Bernardo Vallarino. Yes, please clap for Ciara, she's amazing. Bernardo Vallarino is a Colombian-American mixed media sculptor and installation artist interested in geopolitical issues of violence and human suffering. His works reflect his observations of the hypocrisy he perceives existing between the rhetoric of human life and the violent behavior of humanity. With his artworks, Vallarino strives to engage his audience visually, but also morally and philosophically, finding inspiration in history, the media, his personal experiences, and his lifelong interest in insects and entomology. He graduated with a BFA in sculpture from Texas Christian University, an MFA in the same field from Texas Women's University, and he is the current coordinator of Fort Worth Art Collective and a board member at Arts De La Rosa here in Fort Worth. His work in New Stories, New Futures is Lamentation, and he creates an immersive multimedia installation of a series of human-scale objects that together resemble a gravesite inside of a mortuary or memorial building. And if you have not experienced his installation, it's phenomenal. So, welcome, Bernardo, to the conversation.
Thanks so much.
And then our last but not least artist that will be a part of our conversation today is Jessica Fuentes. She is an artist, educator, and community advocate. Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Not the last one, sorry.
Just
I didn't
continue,
see
it's
it back
fine.
there. Anyway,
I can just
sorry.
slowly back out the door.
This is what happens when you're blind. Anyway, so Jessica is an artist, educator, and community advocate. Her art explores concepts of time, memory, home, and culture through printed and projected layered images and spaces and built structures. She is a member of Act United, which commissioned a temporary public art project in Fort Worth called Coming Home. And over the last decade, she's worked in the museum education field, instrumental in the development of the C3 Visiting Artist Project at the Dallas Museum of Art, and the Carter Community Artists Initiative at the Amon Carter Museum of American Art here in Fort Worth. Her work in New Stories, New Futures is exploring ephemerality of time, nature, life, and dreams by juxtaposing images through pairing, layering, and transparency. Her installations use video footage and film photographs captured over the past decade from places revisited, like her hometown in Galveston, Texas. Help me in welcoming Jessica Fuentes. And our true last artist is Jeff Gibbons, and certainly not least. He is an interdisciplinary artist and an amazing curator in his own right. With an extensive regional and international presence, he received an MFA in Intermedia Studio Practices from the University of Texas at Arlington in 2013, and he's currently represented by Conduit Gallery in Dallas. His work in New Stories, New Futures, Just Drive, is a powerful work that is looking at his experiences filming a short documentary about his friend and his friend's art, who died in 2020 And his projection is specifically the videos of him riding the backseat of his friend's car in 2016. And the video parallels Jeff's experience on the road in 2021, where the words "just drive," words that his friend really centered in his mind, come full circle. So welcome, Jeff Gibbons. Such a pleasure to have all these wonderful artists here with us today. So I think for our conversation, which is what I really want this to be, I really want the opportunity to give you all as artists that platform to speak to why this particular exhibition was something that you wanted to be a part of. One of the things that really grabbed me was the emphasis on community that was a part of the Pioneer Tower. And so for me, it was important to bring in artists that I felt reflected that as well. And so just wanted to see what your thoughts were in regards to the Pioneer Tower project, and then how you see your work expanding on that and bringing it to a local level. So you can all, you don't all have to speak at once.
I'll just start real quick by saying, as somebody who was on the Arts Commission, getting to see the early stages towards this event, and then finding out later that I had a chance to be a part of it was pretty exciting. So, you know, it went through so many changes and evolutions, and to get to where it came to last night was really exciting to see the culmination of so much work by so many people. And I think that speaks a lot to the sense of community that you mentioned, where it took a lot of moving parts and a lot of voices to end up with where we came.
Ciara?
I just want to say it was a great opportunity to work with you, but also all these artists, even the ones that are in the audience right now, we'll speak later. It was a great opportunity for us to actually come together, meet each other, and spend time with each other and learning about that. As much as it is about the art, we basically got to take care of each other. With, are you okay? Do you need help? Do you need something? Let's talk about it. Let's experience it together. And I think that really came out for me because I'm not in Fort Worth all the time. I'm in Dallas most of the time, so to have this community here and to come and work with them and be inspired by them was great. Especially for us to be together and see this thing, this monument, because now it is a monument, come to life, like Nick said, like all these years of work. And it's just like, okay, this is the pinnacle of this moment. Let's keep it going. And we're the ones that like laid the groundwork for it. And now we get to move forward.
Bernardo?
Well, for me, it has been a great experience, and I'm very thankful for everybody to have put it together. I know it took a lot of hands, a lot of people, in order to put it together, but we, as the artists, as the recipients of the gift of being having the ability to present our work in this format is very special. We in Fort Worth, as local artists, have been working with all the larger organizations about bringing the conversation of what Fort Worth art looks like versus what Fort Worth art seems to be like from people's eyes. And this is a great way to show what our community art looks like from the artists themselves here in Fort Worth and also Dallas. One of the things that I love about this concept of community is that we need to start undividing the DFW area and being much more of a community, as an art community. It's amazing how hard that line is, you know, right through, 360 when it comes down to the art communication. So this really brings both cities together in a new way, and I'm very happy to be part of it, and I'm very, very thankful for everybody to give us the opportunity.
Thank you, Bernardo. Jessica?
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that a little bit and say, out of all of the artists in this exhibition, maybe all of the Fort Worth artists I have known, I have worked with, I have shown work alongside. So it was a really great opportunity to get to meet and work with our Dallas friends. But really, you know, anything that Dr. Lauren Cross does, I know is going to be amazing and thoughtfully done. So when she reached out for the ask, I had so much faith and trust that whatever the ask was, however it came together, it was going to be beautifully executed and thoughtfully done.
Jeff?
Sorry, what was the question?
A lot of steps, right? So my question was just, you know, in accepting this opportunity, like what were some of the things about this that maybe motivated you to want to be a part of it? And then how did it connect to some of the things that you're already working with right now?
Well, one nice motivator was that there was a paycheck attached, so that was nice. Second, you know, it's
That's a
hard to
real
say
thing.
no to anything. You got to keep busy, and Aurora is a big project, and of course I want to work with them. For me too, my whole project ended up being tied up with a very personal life event. Lauren asked me the title of my piece the exact same day I found out that my friend had passed away. And so I used his words that he gave me as my title. And as time went by, this piece for me is actually the culmination of something highly personal, but also I think just meaningful as an artwork in its own right, which is sort of my goal as an artist, is to bring those things together. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the things that I really enjoyed most about, you know, having lots of conversations with you all about what your ideas were, what you were thinking about doing, and how it evolved over time. What do you feel was the greatest challenge, you know, as you were preparing for this monumental opportunity to be a part of this exhibition and connected to this monumental public artwork? What were the challenges, you know? And I'm also an artist, so I feel like that's such a crucial question that I think we have to ask ourselves all the time. Like, what was the challenge? How can I use this moving forward?
I think I do site-specific work a lot, and I know you do as well. And challenges are always going to be, what is the site going to do today? And I think I'm one of the people that immediately got to the site and changed my whole plan after seeing and experiencing. And that was a challenge because y'all had to take a leap of faith on me because they were like, what are you doing? And I was like, it's changing. Give me a second. And y'all supported me so much because I was like, okay, it's this. And then a week later, it turned into something totally different. And that was grace and gratitude because y'all just gave me the leeway to be like, use the site, do what you want, make it work. We trust you. And that was great, but it was a challenge because I had to trust y'all and I had to trust myself and build this like moment of like, okay, I have a safety net and they love me and they're gonna let me do this. And I have to trust that the site is gonna work and it's not gonna fail me. It did fail me on Wednesday, but we made it through. We made it through. And that was a challenge and I had to work through it. And I think one of the other things was just being present through all the moving parts and just like understanding that Fort Worth Public Council needed certain things and you needed certain things and I needed certain things and Erica needed certain things. So shout out to Erica Felicella.
She's amazing.
The brains behind Aurora.
Yeah.
And accepting all our calls and text messages and emails. We love you. But like those were the challenges that we had to like accept all these moving parts and the site and we just had to keep going.
Well, for me, anytime that you have a big project like this, it becomes a balancing act. And it's not a balancing act with two sides, but more like a circular where you have to put different things in different locations in order for it to balance. So you have time, you have money, you have your own life, you have your what I call my Bruce Wayne job, right? My daytime job. All of those things you have to balance, and that is based on a linear time with a goal. And for creating a 20,000 square foot installation in 3 months, where all the pieces were handmade, it requires a lot of timing, a lot of focus. And the challenge for me is that, unless you are a big, well-recognized artist getting paid the big bucks, you don't have a studio that can hold a 20,000 square foot installation. So you have objects that are meant to be placed in this space, and they're all completely dismantled, When you guys go see the installation, if you haven't seen it, there's a really large butterfly. That butterfly was never put together in the studio, So you had to have kind of, faith in some way that it's going to work. But that was the challenge, was that when all of these things get together, it needs to look like it's right here and in my drawings. And if you have a painting, or you're working on a smaller object in the studio, if something goes wrong, well, you can sometimes fix it, right? But in my case, I did not know what it looked like until literally 10 hours before the opening, because once the first time the lights went off down there with everything set, that's when I saw the artwork. So the challenge of making sure that all of those things were balancing time, yada, 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 for that moment was the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I also did not have a space to build my installation until I got here. And I was just like working in the storage unit, like, okay, here are the 348 boxes, here are the 45 pairs of shoes. Okay, the video is done, I don't know what it all looks like. Let's just go and do it. And yeah, we are moving and just working at it.
Yeah.
And that's what you're both speaking to are like, these are the challenges of site-specific works.
Yeah.
So.
But we live for those
Yeah.
challenges. We want those challenges, and we seldom have the opportunity in spaces like the ones we have to be able to really spread our wings and show what our skills are. So once again, I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as someone who wasn't working in it as a giant installation piece, just projection, I've never projected something so large before. And in the past, when I've been working in video, I've had a small projector that I could test out. So also not being able to test out my images ahead of time, not seeing how it's going to look on the wall until the night before the exhibition, and there's no going back. I'm not going to be able to go home at 1 o'clock in the morning on Friday morning and rework a file if I need to. So having that faith and just moving forward and pushing kind of through that fear of it was a challenge and different for me.
What are some of the things that, because one of the questions that I was asked a lot as the curator of the show is what should viewers expect when they get there? And I kind of purposely shied away from trying to create a clear picture, because I knew that everyone was creating site-specific works. But what are some of the things that you feel like, what would you like the viewer to understand about what you were trying to communicate? And that can be, down to like the materials, down to the types of images. You all, which I love about you all, is that you all took this opportunity and you all took it from so many different angles. And so that all is an artistic choice, right? So like, what motivated you to go down that route? And as Ciara said, some of you made multiple changes in the process, which is normal, right? But like, what were you hoping to communicate? Because all of this is about communication, right, at the end of the day. And, what you would hope people, can get from your message.
Should I field that since I didn't get the last question still?
Yes.
I'm just going to answer the last one too, and we were talking about the scope of things, because that was a major thing for me with this show. We all know Aurora events as being these sort of spectacular, extremely large things. And so for me, scale is just as much a material as my own body or this fabric or anything that's around. And, I went through a lot of it, and this couples into the next question too, because I went through lots of iterations of things, and I tend to do that with any sort of work or show. And the only people that were privy to those things is Lauren, my partner, and my studio mate, and nobody else here gets to hear about those until I maybe make those pieces later, because just because I thought about them and didn't do them doesn't mean they won't be done.
Right.
And so anyways, for me, scale, I just wanted to collapse down into something small, intimate. I turned it away from the open area into the smaller space in order to almost put you in a room to view the piece. So for me, instead of going big, I decided to go small in a big place, which I felt really helped what it was. And I don't know if anybody here has even seen the piece, but it's basically just my hand on the outside of a car window in the back seat, running along the street like I used to do when I was a little kid. And so what you just asked, I guess, is what do you want people to get from it? And I think I don't expect anybody to come to my piece and understand anything that I've gone through, nor do I want them to. But I do love the idea of somebody seeing that and attaching that moment into something maybe special within themselves from their youth, which is a more innocent place that we all, I don't want to feel nostalgic for it. I simply want to recognize that exists and still exists, and that I love the idea of hopefully people leaving that show and maybe doing that on the way home or doing it later or even just thinking about it. And primarily I like my work to work in that way, where it just sort of psychologically gets into you in some way, and you might not even know it.
And I think that's what I love so much about your piece, Jeff, because I feel like getting a chance to hear the iterations that I will not say, because you said you may use them in other places.
I'll make them later. Yeah, I have plans to.
But I loved actually that process for you, because as you said, this was something that was very personal for your experience. And, it's often said, as artists, like, this is very personal to, like, for a lot of us, sharing anything, whether it's, something as so personal as what you experienced, Jeff, or... But we also, everybody in here has gone through something very similar and will, if they haven't, right? So just, it's, those decisions are critical, but I love that I love that connection that you made about just the environment and kind of challenging the environment by going small, which I thought was very effective, by the way. So I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you. I was worried about that. I wasn't sure.
Anyone else?
I was going to mention, with my piece, anybody who knows my work, it's extremely layered. And I get that question a lot on regards to what do you want people to take with them. And, for us as artists, it's very difficult. We put this out in the world, and everybody, your own bias, your own lives, everybody takes a different take on what it is. Bottom line, with this piece, I wanted to convey this feeling of loss through emotion. And I wanted you to truly feel it through all your senses, complete immersion into a sense of weight, of mourning of sorts. So that's all of the elements in there. Kind of, if you were to dilute them down, that's really what I wanted for people to take away from them. This kind of real big sense of loss. Now, there's many other layers, obviously, to the work. We're talking about the minorities and et cetera, but bottom line, that sense of loss.
Nick, what about you?
I hope that there was a sense of validation and representation of either, personal history or even just interests by people who attended last night and hopefully tonight, where they can see some aspect of their life validated through reuse of an image that is presented in their social media feed or their own history, or someone that looks like them, that has become the size of a building. Some aspect that for the last couple of years we've kind of missed in these public spaces. And it's going back to your last question. I think for all of us that were invited to be part of this event, we're so used to showing artwork that we've made in a more controlled space. And so to transition to a more uncontrolled space where the audience is unknown, the presence of, a crowd versus nobody being there, will the work remain the same or will it take on a new meaning? Those are the new expectations that come with that work. And so that's exciting, but also terrifying as a maker. And so my hope is that, the people that came last night and might come back or tell someone about it and they come tonight, is they get to see some aspect of their own life or interests validated.
And I think that actually stretches to what my next question was going to kind of touch around, and that is, a lot of people ask, like, what was the angle for the curation? Like, why these particular artists? Why this particular thing? And I think that I was definitely inspired by the Pioneer Project, the Tower Project. But I also, I'm very, very well aware, and, many of us are all very involved in the local community, the broader local community, citizen community. I'm a citizen of Fort Worth, and then also I'm a part of the art community as well. So just having that knowledge of what those realities might look like, I definitely wanted to make sure that, we had a body of artists that could speak to a lot of different types of experiences. Because, in our city, often there is a feeling of, it might only look like certain types of people exist in the city. And so I wanted to ensure that in the exhibition that there was a wide variety of voices that could speak to different angles of an experience. So, I didn't necessarily communicate that to you all, obviously, but that was something that I really wanted to be present. My knowledge of the city, my knowledge of the conversations in the city, and what I knew would be impactful. That, as Nick said, seeing images of Black and brown people, seeing large and small scale, works in an exhibition. That diversity of approaches was, I felt, critical. The other part was, in being a part of so many community projects, I recognized how much our community loves local artists. And so I felt that representation of both artists from Fort Worth and also North Texas more broadly was going to be a key thing. So in that representation question, how is representation important in your specific work and practice, and how does that kind of frame some of your own conversations? I mean, I can see it as a curator, in my knowledge of each of your work, I can see representation, whether it's your own personal experience or the communities that you represent, but how is representation a critical aspect of what you're doing?
I'm going to start with that one. As an artist that does social commentary, anytime there's something social to kind of look at you, it's like, what kind of artwork are you going to make? And when it comes to representation, I am extremely mindful in the fact that my experience is completely different from everybody's experience, and I cannot make artwork that represents somebody else's experience. So you got to be very careful. Now there is in my work, if you see, it's very generalistic because as human beings we bleed, we cry, we have those things, and that's where I approach a lot of my artwork from. It's not until I am addressing details in my work, where you'll see my personal life and where it kind of expands to others, right? So that's when you'll find things related to, I don't know, my own personal life, my religious background, and all of those things. And that's how I see that approach. I am mindful, obviously, of, the different people that I am trying to represent, but I do not assume to represent them in any way, other than myself and speaking from my own experience.
Yes.
Well, one thing I'll say about representation in my work, maybe two things. I'm not a Spanish speaker. I'm not a native Spanish speaker, but my grandparents were, and 30% of Fort Worth speak Spanish. So within the last few years, I've made it a point to translate the titles of my works of art and to present them that way as the full title, both in English and Spanish. And I think that is an important thing to do to represent our Spanish-speaking communities. The other thing is, as a mother, I think sometimes maybe, like when I was younger, there was kind of a hesitation to depict motherhood and what that means, and to put children in my art. But it's something that I've really leaned into over the last maybe 5 or 6 years. And so depicting children, my children, in my art and having them on the wall projected for kids to see and to relate to, for parents and people to see and relate to in a different way is important to me as well.
I think for me, it is always going to be that I go into these institutions and there are very small samples of people that look like me that are there, whether working, educating, viewing arts, experience art. So for me, it's always coming back to, I saw these things growing up that really inspired me and represented me, and they are very simple. I'm not even gonna call them simple. They're very recognizable in pop culture. So whether it be like how much I was into MTV or looking at magazines, and that became my art. For me, and experiencing stuff in museums and galleries didn't connect. So for me to have these opportunities to show at a museum or in a gallery or at, my alma mater, I'm always like, I need to show and represent myself as much as I can. And for me, it's like you said, I'm not depicting a monolith of Blackness. I'm showing my personal experience, and like my statement says, it's my personal experience with Blackness. So for me to depict Air Force Ones in this way, over and over and over, repetitive, like it's directly from being a generation of music videos and seeing rappers and artists and women build this culture around it. And for me to show that, and for a sneakerhead to come in and be like, oh, I immediately resonate with that, depending if he was white, black, Asian, like they are in there and they can see themselves. It doesn't matter. It's talking about this one specific thing that started from this thing. And it begins to have a whole nother conversation of where the dialogue can exist. But also, like, I'm putting this experience that is mine up for everybody else to see.
Anyone else want to speak to that question?
I mean, I guess I can just say that my art is my life, and as much as I want to be a better person and a good person and a good human being, I want my art to be good, genuine, honest art. And so, yeah, I feel a large responsibility to not make bad art.
Yeah, that's a big, I feel you on that one. Anyone else? And if if no one else has anything, I definitely wanted to open it up to our amazing audience that's here with us today to ask any questions of our artists. Anyone have any questions? Oh, there you are.
Hello, y'all.
Hey.
There's people here.
Yes, in the back. I'll be there in just a second.
Oh, we got a mic in the audience.
I know.
I was just curious if you all created these pieces especially for this event, or were you maybe reiterating, or doing a new iteration, I should say, of a piece you've done in the past?
Oh, well, I'll go first. So, yes, this is a completely new piece, but it is tied to some of the work that I've previously done. Like last night, I explained that every installation I've done in the last 2 years have had a pair of Air Forces in it, in the title Observer. So it's kind of a continuation on those two things, but it's totally, completely new for this experience.
Yep. Oh, I was just gonna say, similar approach. I mean, my art grows and builds on itself, right? I think most artists probably work in that way. And so while it is a new work of art, new works that I created, it's definitely something that's building on all of my past work. And mine in particular is 2 videos that showcase video footage and photographs that have been taken over the past decade. So.
Well, for this installation, it is all just part of the growth of being an artist. Most of my ideas live in my sketchbook for years before they even come out. I have to really, really be comfortable with the subject. I have to be fully aware because my artwork, it speaks on behalf, I think, of people who cannot speak on, for themselves. So these are real lives. These are real individuals. These are real stories I'm telling. Because I interview them and I follow them and things of that nature. So I'm really, really careful when I create a piece of artwork, and I'm very meticulous with the process. So they are ideas that are there for a long time. And for this specific piece, it's an expansion. It's in a brand new series that I'm starting to work on. That came after working with 6 years of working with refugees, and then. Last year with COVID, I realized that, but then I started seeing a connectivity between the poor and also migrants and how we want to kind of take from their cultures, whether it's food, music, whatever it is, but we want to keep a distance. We kind of keep a glass, something between us. Even sometimes we don't want to talk with them. Or our religious backgrounds in regards to, we have this mentality of being good to our neighbor, but if there's a person that's asking for $1 or in a restaurant and don't smell too well, then we really don't want to be around them. So I've taken those experiences and I moved on into a new series called The Butterfly Case, in which this is part of. And this installation is kind of the farthest part of that body of work, and I call it the farthest part because this is dealing with people who you want to see dead rather than being around you. So it's a pretty, not sad piece, a very solemn piece that is being kind of in my sketchbook for a long time. And actually, it all started 16 years ago when I went into a store in New Orleans, and I walked into this. I don't know what it is, like a whole bunch of antiques, and one wall was full of butterfly, insects. There's all this beauty, but they're all dead. Mm-hmm. So it's taken 16 years to get that experience in a sketchbook and slowly coming out until COVID allowed me to put it all together, kind of thing. So
the experiences of what's happening today often kind of probe us in different ways,
The coolest thing, though, of the whole thing is that the architecture of the garage allowed for a iteration of this installation that I could have not asked for better. So
yes.
that makes it unique.
Nick, what about your pieces?
I've made versions of the arcade cabinet machines for a few years that were always really small and portable, and the kind of necessary evil of portability and storage. And so I've always drawn in sketchbooks and repeatedly had these dreams of a cozy outdoor environment because these machines are often expensive and cared for in dark enclosed spaces like a bar, an arcade, or the corner of a grocery store, which is where most of these experiences from my life came from, where you make a beeline to where the cash register was and play an old dingy game with a stranger, some kid that didn't speak your language. And so seeing them outside has this kind of transitive quality that I hadn't had the opportunity to play with before. And that's kind of why I tailored them to this experience. But I'm excited because it makes real this reality that previously only existed for me in, the boardwalk scene of an 80s movie where people are playing something by a beach, or walking by, through the desert where it never rains and there's just stuff outside of a storefront. And that was not the case for somebody who grew up on the Gulf Coast, where if you leave something outside for 5 minutes, it rusts and falls apart. So this was exciting to kind of leave something to the elements and see what happens.
Yes.
Even if it's just for 2 days.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a question right there.
Is there something unexpected that you will take from this experience that will lead you to a new body of work or something that you bring back to the studio that was kind of a surprise?
Any surprises?
A lot of them. I think for me, I'm used to having extra walls for me. Like, I'm always thinking about a space in the sense of oh, I have a space that I can transform. Like when I think about this piece in relation to the piece I did last summer at the Nashville Windows Project, I didn't have walls in this version of server. I'm thinking about that as oh, I have a outer wall, but I don't have anything to support this work, so I have to build it. I think for me, I'm about to build more support walls or fake out walls again, to transform some of my server pieces or whatever I am making next. It might not be a server. But also it's pushing me more into making larger digital pieces. I do have a piece coming up that is more analog based, with TVs, but now I'm just what if I did bigger projections? And I'm oh crap, now I gotta rent and buy a projector. So it is pushing me along to do bigger things, I guess. I'm inspired by this one. I'm now I gotta turn the whole garage into a server.
Yeah, I think making art is, there's all this sort of cliche sort of ideas that it's just things just sort of pop out of the artist's head, but everything's about an interaction with something else, somewhere, somebody. I haven't done a single thing ever that didn't somehow bounce into the next thing, and even if that meant not making art anymore, or, it's it's making cheese, you just bounce around. And I think the more control you try to keep over it, the more crazy you go, In this business anyways, it's not easy.
And I think that was, Ciara kind of pointed to the sort of liberty that I purposefully really gave everyone to choose whether, as Martha asked the question, to, take something that you already had or reimagine it in that way or to create something new. Part of that was, understanding that process in which Jeff is saying, that some things can, move into the other, or sometimes it's like, I did that and I will never do that again.
Yeah.
So just,
But then 10 years later, you're like, oh, wait,
exactly.
Hey, let me go back
That's
to it,
right,
yeah.
that's
that was
right.
actually really good.
Yeah.
So just understanding, how these, how a studio practice works. And as a curator, I'm an artist that is a curator, so I've been in situations where it is, like, I only want this. And so I understand how limiting that can feel as an artist. And so I purposefully was like, I really want to see what you want to make. Here, this is what I'm thinking about as a thing, but I really want to see what you make of this, because I wanted to help you in what you're trying to do. And I'm also a teacher, so sometimes like a lot of flexibility annoys people. Really tell me what to do.
That's the reason why I say, like, are you sure? 'Cause I know you know my work, it's like, are you sure?
I know, I think we all enjoyed the flexibility.
Yes.
Because some of us did go through multiple iterations and changes, but it was just like, you trusted us so much to make it work, and that was the thing. There was nobody hounding us of like, okay, we want this, we want to see it like this. It was just like, you're the artist, we're giving you the money, we're giving you the time, we're giving you the space, go. And we very much appreciated that, because we got to play as much as we wanted to.
And we kind of talked about how few times we often have as artists, as professional artists, to play, to have we have studio visits, but to like critique, like formal critique, like we may have had in school. And so I think for me, I understand how critical those opportunities to play are, for the continuum of your practice. So for me, it was about like, I want to be a part of that journey of your work versus to kind of be like, this is the bracket of your work that I want to be a part of, but to say I want to be a part of the actual journey of what you're doing versus like blocking you in. So, and I also just, genuinely wanted to see like what would these 10 artists do with if you give, amazing artists the resources to do work, so few opportunities exist where we can play with money, that sounds horrible.
Literally.
I do. I've seen my work lately.
As an artist, these opportunities are few far in between.
Yeah.
So recognizing that, for me, it was like looking at your body of work and saying, well, I have full faith in all of these artists. And for me, that's huge, I don't want to ever curate an exhibition where I don't have full faith in all of the artists. Even if you don't know what's going to happen, like, I know that you can do it, So bravo to all of you.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Dr. Lauren Cross, for moderating and for putting this all together. And thank you again to the Kimbell for hosting us today. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We're going to come back at 3:05. And we've got another panel, 5 more of the artists who are participating, and Dr. Cross will again be moderating. For those of you joining us online, thank you. We'll have a quick break, so come back, tell your friends to log on. For the rest of you, thank you again for being here. The restrooms are just outside the door. We'll return in about 10 minutes. In the meantime, mark your calendars for Thursday, August 26th. We'll have another artist talk, this time virtually, on Facebook, on the Arts Council of Fort Worth's Facebook page, featuring Rafiq Anadol and Davida Quayola, and moderated by curator Dun Choi, who helps put together the major installation at Pioneer Tower. And of course, if you hadn't had a chance to see all of this, go on to newstoriesnewfutures.org, reserve your time, check it out tonight, 9 to 1 in the morning. It's your last chance to see it, so do not sleep on it. Thank you again, and we'll